Thank you very much. November 26, 2025. It's year 4, day 276. Since the full-scale invasion began, welcome to the Daily Situation Report. Above all, I welcome all subscribers and those who will become subscribers today. Russia's central bank is selling its gold reserves for the first time. Before the war, they had 405.7 tons of gold reserves. The Ministry of Finance sold 236.6 tons, 57%, of gold to cover budget gaps. So only 173.1 tons remain, and the central bank wants to keep selling. That really hurts now, especially when 3/4 of Russian coal companies have become unprofitable. Russia's oil and gas revenues fell by 35% in November, and Russia's automotive industry, especially regarding the Lara, expects a 40% drop in production. United States sanctions on companies like Lukoil aren't helping, and every Ukrainian drone that hits another power plant makes things even harder for Russia, especially for its economy. According to the National Post, part of the recorded phone call between the United States Special Envoy for Russian Affairs, Steve Witkoff, and Yuri Ushakov, Putin's foreign policy advisor, has been released. We can see that right here in the background. Witkoff is said to have made it clear to the foreign policy advisor how best to manipulate Trump. He suggested Trump should be congratulated for any achievements, and that you should always tell him nicely that you've always supported him and that you respect him as well. That's just what Trump wants to hear. Witkoff also said that he convinced Trump that the Russian Federation had always wanted a peace agreement. So Agent Witkoff did a good job when it came to manipulating Trump for the interests of the Russian side. It is also mentioned that they want to present a 20-point plan similar to the one for the Gaza Strip. Based on this recommendation, the 28-point plan that we saw a few days ago was probably created. According to the Wall Street Journal, the phone call also resulted in no Tomahawk cruise missiles being delivered to Ukraine. Putin explained to Trump during their joint phone call that they would no longer make a difference at the front, but would worsen United States-Russian relations. Steve Witkoff gave Moscow early information about Zelensky's planned United States visit, where Kiev aimed to discuss these weapons. This allowed the Kremlin to arrange an early phone call with Trump and influence the tone of subsequent talks between Washington and Kiev. The result? Moscow gained time and control over the narrative, while Kiev initially lost the option for long-range strikes. I always thought that Agent Donald Krasnov Trump was the relationship killer, but it seems it's actually his special envoy, Agent Witkoff. Several members of Congress, several recruitment activities, if their government made another mistake, it could once again have a negative impact on Trump himself. He obviously doesn't want that. How does it appear from the Russian side? Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov did welcome the United States' efforts to find solutions to the crisis, which is actually a war, but he ruled out any concessions in the war against Ukraine. In other words, Russia is willing to talk as long as they don't have to give up their main demands or guarantee anything else regarding Ukraine. So Moscow only wants to negotiate if there is nothing to negotiate about their demands. How many times have we played this game now? 7, 8, or 9? Greetings go out to all the editors, news broadcasters, and writers who once again believed in this endless loop of confusion that something would change and peace would come closer. While all eyes under the focus of the situation map are on Bukrovsk, the next battles are taking place at the outskirts of Huljapole. The town is currently held by the 102nd. Attacked, the Territorial Defense Brigade is being engaged by the 38th Motorized Rifle Brigade, which was able to trap Sheliny High in a dangerous pincer movement. Now the question is whether the Ukrainians can manage to get the soldiers out of the pocket or if they will be lost. The attack from the Russian side is coming from the east and from the southeast of the city. Both entrances to the town were heavily shelled by artillery today, while a successful Russian attack took place on the suburbs of Veskoje and Shatiskia. We can see the changes on the situation maps here in dark red. I think that by the end of the week, the first infantry attacks on the city will take place. Of course, I'll keep an eye on the place for you. But here, the Russians want to put even more pressure, in addition to the already heavily contested area near Pokrovsk. A Russian Porcupine attack column made up of tanks, BMPs, and MTLBs was completely covered with mesh netting. Although it looks grotesque, it is actually quite effective as improvised protection against drones. You know, I really enjoy making fun of Russian improvisation since in 99% of cases they don't help at all, and sometimes even make things worse. But in this case, I haven't been able to say anything bad about it so far. So far, the attached brushes aren't bad at preventing it. They catch fuses and lines, make top attack approaches more difficult, meaning attacks on the weak spots of the armor, disrupt proximity fuses, and force drone pilots into less favorable impact angles. According to the Ukrainians, with this improvised protection, it takes up to 12 drone hits to disable the vehicle. The price is high: extra weight, less visibility and mobility, a taller silhouette, more fire load, and limited sensors. Their effectiveness depends heavily on the density and placement, and above all, on the accompanying protection and mine clearance. Meanwhile, Ukrainians are adapting with larger tandem-capable charges. For example, a double U charge uses the first charge to destroy protection and the second to penetrate the vehicle, or rather the vehicle's armor. Conversely, attacks also come from side or low angles, hitting the running gear, optics, engine deck, and through coordinated drone assaults. The attacks arrive in small swarms. Conclusion: Porcupine armor highlights how drones have transformed the battlefield. In contrast to other improvised protection mechanisms on the Russian side, it is actually useful, but not a breakthrough protection and does not replace proper combat tactics. Reconnaissance, engineering units, and air defense greatly boost a tank's effectiveness. Ukrainian long-range drones hit the regional capital Cheboksary, about 1,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border during the night. The target was the premises of Veneer Progress. The plant is an important Russian supplier of protection and automation technology, as well as hardware and software solutions for industrial controls. And it also requires antennas for anti-drone systems. So, to put it briefly, a plant that manufactures parts for anti-drone systems was hit by drones. A strike on such a facility has several effects at once: possible disruptions in supply chains for energy and industrial automation, delays in components for air defense and anti-drone defense, and further proof of Ukrainian reach deep into the Russian hinterland. Do you know what phrase I've read quite often? Why do I actually have to use flimsy paper straws and soon buy an electric car? When in the war in Ukraine, so many environmentally harmful acts happen every day. And that's actually a valid point because, of course, a lot of environmentally harmful acts are happening. War is definitely not good for the environment. There's an interesting report on that because Ukraine is planning to demand $44 billion from Russia so far for climate-related damages caused by the full-scale invasion. This is the first time in history that a country is specifically demanding compensation for emissions caused by war. Since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, national emissions have increased by over 230 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. That's roughly equivalent to the annual emissions of Austria, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia combined. So the damages considered go beyond just the emissions. They also include the destruction of homes, forests, land, water pollution, and biodiversity loss. Special thanks to Algo Crew channel members and Lieutenant Colonel Renicky. As always, thank you for listening. Feel free to subscribe, like, leave comments, and see you in the next situation report.